Okay, thank you everybody for joining with us today. It's been a really, really popular webinar, so thanks very much for bearing with us while we just let some people join. For those of you who aren't known to Access Planet, or you don't know who Access Planet are, we are a training management software house based up in the northwest of England, in Lancaster. And for those of you who aren't aware of what our training industry benchmark report is, every year we do a survey where we target hundreds of training professionals and organisations and just ask them for their feedback on the training industry in general. And the idea is that we just pull out some trends and some patterns emerging within the marketplace, and that's what today's webinar is all about. So I'm going to start off just by showing you the 5 sort of sections that we're going to look at today, and these were sort of 5 things that really sort of jumped out at us at Access Planet as a team, sort of really resonated with how we work. And we're going to start off by looking at focusing on the rise of e-learning in the next 12 months. I'm going to pass you over to my colleague Patrick, who's going to take you through that area of today's webinar.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, so what I'd like to talk about is the focus on e-learning. As you can see by the slide in front of you, there's been a serious increase in the year-on-year growth of training courses of focus on e-learning. And you can see in the next 12 months, more and more people are looking to implement it. And there's a few reasons for that, and we'll go through it in the next couple of slides. So the top 3 trends for e-learning, sort of hot topics, are mobile learning, video-based training, and virtual environment avatars. And again, over the next few slides, we'll cover each of them with a short video, certainly to the last one. So let's move on to mobile learning. So I suppose from a training company's point of view, it's an easy-to-get-to device. It's very convenient. It's not just mobile, but you think about the tablets or e-readers. And as you can see, 74% of people use mobile devices for e-learning. And I suppose the reason for that is because it's anywhere, anytime. It's really easily accessible. The next point is for video-based training. I believe YouTube is the second most searched for thing after Google. So there's an awful lot of people that utilise video-based training currently. And the reason for it, I suppose, is that 95% of a message that they watch in a video is retained compared to 10% when reading it. And that's really key. Everyone likes to see things, that the visual experience is far more beneficial than reading it. And the final section, if we look at it, is the virtual environment and avatars. Now, I think for something like this from a training company perspective, it makes things far more affordable. If you're looking at the equipment that has to be used, this would be significantly cheaper because actually you're just putting on a headset and you're straight, you're immersing yourself within it. And again, it's much more retainable from a training aspect. And I suppose it's a controlled environment, so it's much safer as well. There's less sort of worry, less sort of possibility of anything going wrong. Now, this next video that we're going to play, it's not a plug or anything like that. It's mainly an example of virtual reality for training from eLearning Studio. So let's take a look at this. Let's press play on that one.
Diagnostics says there's a loose connection at the top of the tower. If you can get your key ready, I'm going to call it in to make sure that we're all clear.
tough act to follow there with that video there. Looks like probably the worst video game I've ever seen, but hopefully, people enjoy it from a training perspective, and I can certainly see the added value of that type of technology within the training industry. To sort of build off the back of that, another sort of key point that really sort of jumped out at me from this year's training industry survey was the increased or continued rise in the use of training management systems within the marketplace. And that's more than doubled since 2016. In tandem with that is a huge rise in online booking, being the main source of customer bookings for the business and the main sort of driver. It's not all good though. We can see that 37% of organisations are still not utilising management systems in their business, and 42% of those responded have told us that the current management systems aren't effective. So what I want to talk to you about today is what are the pros and cons to utilising or indeed not utilising software, and what's sort of causing that continued rise in the use of software and technology within the training industry. So first of all, if you're not utilising a training management software, and I've got a little poll for you guys to answer here, so please feel free to respond to that whilst I talk through this slide. So yeah, we can see that if you're not utilising software, 33% of organisations, large businesses, are reporting poor decision making due to spreadsheets. And that to me tells me that we're not utilising the data that we have within those spreadsheets. And if you are using them, it can be very difficult to attain sort of business insight off the back of them. And that's where one of the real sort of plus points of utilising management software. In tandem with that is the 20% of people, large organisations, are telling us that they've seen some sort of direct financial loss due to poor spreadsheets. Again, that for me is pretty telling, because what you'll find is that if you're using a spreadsheet, it's laborious, it's time consuming, so things slip between the gaps, and also it's a manual input. We're all human, we all make errors, we all make mistakes from time to time, and those mistakes can have a huge impact on our businesses. So it's really, they're two real big plus points of utilising software. But that's not just the end of why we're utilising them and why we're seeing a continued rise. We're seeing sort of general consumer trend shifts within the industry and in general, with more and more people starting their buying journey or their learning journey online, as we've already alluded to with the rise of e-learning and sort of mobile technology. But in our own lives, we utilise software in, day out, and that equates to around about 6.5 hours saving per week. So you can see that 42 billion hours potentially saved year on year within the UK alone. So why wouldn't we want to harness that information? Why would we want to harness that software within our business to help us save the same amount of time or exponentially more than that within the marketplace? And I also think that you can attribute it to a shift in demographics. So we are seeing a rise of the millennials and indeed Gen Z, screenagers, if you will, who are tech savvy or tech natives and very much looking for a sort of blurred line when it comes to the workplace. It's no longer a physical place where you turn up to work. We're seeing the rise of more and more people remote working. And that, for me, what I'd like to talk to you today, a little bit more detail, is a little wheel that I pulled from Deloitte Digital Workplace Performance. And this is all about decision-making around utilising software and why would we want to implement it. So you'll see on the edge of this wheel that we have a number of different business drivers within there. So, for example, increased revenue, reduced operating costs. And what we then want to do is work backwards into our workforce to ascertain exactly what types of technology we want to utilise and what effect they will have. So, for example, if we were looking to increase revenue and reduce operating costs, what we'd really want to be looking at is tools that enable us to become more productive in terms of automating processes, so exactly what Active Plan is all about, and increasing collaboration and communication to enable our teams to work more efficiently, work smarter, free up time for them to increase revenue, and by being more productive, our physical labour costs should decrease somewhat, reducing that operating cost. So you can see there that by using this wheel, it's a really, really simple tool to just ascertain what we're looking to achieve, what we really need to implement in order to attain those business drivers. And to finish off this section, I just want to talk a little bit more about online booking and the power of that as a tool within the training industry. As I've already alluded to, we're seeing a continued shift in consumer trends, with more and more people starting that buyer journey online, as I'm sure we all do. The use of Amazon, largest organisation in the world now, and like other tools, e-commerce tools online, it's not surprising that we see a rise in online booking. And there's three really good reasons to implement online booking. The first off, increased shopping. Online shopping is growing. Online bookings enable you to take revenue, increase bookings, take them 365 days a year. You also strengthens your brand, and we're going to talk about the power of brand and indeed marketing in a few moments, but it strengthens that brand. It gets your company in front of people, that social proof, and it also increases your registrations by being able to, as we've already talked about, taking bookings every day of the week. So, as I say, I can't stress enough that it's really important that we look at online bookings, and it's certainly something that jumped out at me in this year's training survey. Now, back over to Patrick to talk to you about customer feedback.
Thank you very much, Joe. Yeah, we focused on, within this sort of training survey, having a look at the feedback that's been received or been obtained. And as you can see, there's a stark decline in the amount of feedback from paper sheets, as you can see from 2016, 2019. And the reason for that is more and more people are opting for online sheets. So one thing that we look to do over the next few slides is go into a bit more detail. Now, we work very closely with CourseCheck and Chris Wigglesworth as well. And earlier this year, we did our Everest show, and Chris was kind enough to join us and go through a talk, and we'll focus on the next few slides about customer feedback. So a lot of questions that we often get asked is the difference between digital and paper feedback. I suppose with digital, people do prefer it. It's a far more honest and insightful feedback, insightful view. You can react much faster, much quicker, depending on the feedback that you get, and it saves an awful lot of time and effort, certainly with it being digital. I suppose the feedback of paper responses, you would often get close to 100% response rate. But one thing that I would suggest is it's not about the quantity of feedback that you get. It's much more important to focus on the quality of the feedback that you get. Now, when you obtain the feedback, what you can do is you can set process for certain scores. So depending on the scores, depending on the comments, you can set a process to obtain that information and relay it appropriately. More importantly, you can drive improvement across trainers. And I suppose with these feedback sheets, what I would always advise is less is more. Don't be asking multiple questions. Focus on the parts of the course that are really specific, the information that you really require to get back. If you do obtain negative feedback, which we're all going to receive, it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's a good thing. It's a way to make yourself look brilliant. So you then establish a process, you respond promptly. Always consider the context of the feedback that's given. That lady or gentleman that's provided that feedback, they may have had a bad day. That might just be the case. And it is worth contacting them directly. People like to know that you're going above and beyond to find out what was poor about the course that they've provided feedback. And don't make it worse. Just concentrate on what's important to them. People like to be looked after. And I suppose the reason why reviews are so important is that these three facts, really. 88% of people trust online reviews as much as personal recommendations. The really important one for me is the 90% read online reviews. I do exactly that. Before I purchase anything, I'll always look to see what people reviewed about it. And it's good to see on this review. It's good to see that people have good and bad things to say about it, because that's where you really want to build that level of trust. And 92% of people more likely to purchase a service if they've read trusted reviews about it. I'm sure we've all been there. When you're buying things online, it doesn't have to be a course, it could be anything particular. You'll always read the reviews to check they're good enough to make sure you're purchasing that possibility, really.
Perfect. Yeah, I certainly concur with that. That power of that social proof, getting that message in front of people is going to really enable you to increase those online bookings.
Yeah.
So, moving on, what I want to talk to you briefly, I don't want to spend too much time talking about Brexit. I'm sure we're all sick and tired of hearing about Brexit and its impact on our businesses. That being said, 6% of training providers feel like Brexit will have a positive impact, so good to know that it's not all doom and gloom within the training industry. But 1/3 of participants have told us that it's already having a negative impact on their business. And I'd like to draw your attention to the graph in the bottom right-hand corner. And I appreciate that 1/3 of people are telling us that, but what really speaks volume to me here is the uncertainty around Brexit. What's going on? When is it going to be implemented is just as detrimental to our businesses as indeed the actual sort of result of impending Brexit. Who does it affect in terms of the training industry? Any organisation which operates within Europe, anyone who has European operations or relies on custom from the European Union is obviously going to have some form of knock-on effect with that change to legislation, and indeed making it a little bit more difficult to interact with those organisations on the continent. One that people necessarily might not think about, but certainly has a huge impact on our businesses, is European staff, the power of administrators. They are there to add value to your business, and if they are European-based, then obviously free movement, that lack of free movement across Europe is going to certainly have a detrimental effect on our training departments and businesses. In terms of the focus, there's always going to be a need for essential training. So anything that's compliance driven is definitely going to be a requirement, regardless of Brexit. But it's those additional types of training, those soft skills, those nice to have training offerings, which are certainly having a reduced sort of impact in terms of booking numbers. And that's certainly something that I've heard from a lot of training organisations out there, that's optional. Those optional add-ons are really where we're feeling that hit. Anybody who is relying on delegates and learners from EU funding sources is certainly going to see that hit. Potentially, we might see an uptake in UK-based funding, but certainly anyone who's relying on that is going to need to look at formulating a plan. And the most vulnerable sectors in terms of Brexit are financial services and supply chains. So anyone who offers training to those vertical markets is certainly going to take a hit to a certain degree. And I'd also like to add a third point on that one. Actually, the agriculture industry is certainly looking at potential hits with Brexit upcoming. That's not to say that it has to be all doom and gloom. It doesn't have to be that negative impact. What can we do to prepare? What can we do to future-proof our training company for Brexit? And I'd like to bring your attention to a blog post that we produced a few weeks ago, and I'm going to be drawing on it quite heavily today. So if you want to read that in full and you want to get access to some tools that we've linked in there, please do visit our blog to get a bit more information. And we broke it down into 4 steps in terms of future-proofing your business for Brexit. And that first one is to essentially to create a strategy, come up with a plan. And the first step to doing that effectively is to really find out what Brexit means for your business, not necessarily the industry in general, but your business itself. And there is a really great tool that we've linked out to in our blog, so please do access that if you want to get a little bit more help on that. And this really does draw about on what Patrick was talking about. We're seeing that shift in trends to more mobile learning, e-learning, and the rise of on-demand content. And that's a real plus point for us in terms of future-proofing our business, is shifting to a more digital approach. For example, 60% of e-learning consists of compliance training. So when we're talking about that need is always going to be there for compliance training. If we're shifting towards that e-learning platforms, it just enables us to reduce our costs to some degree. The next one is certainly something that we're all about here at Access Planet with our customers and indeed our organisation, and that's investing in automated technology, investing in efficiency, freeing up time for the important stuff. Get our administrators looking at what we really need to deal with impending change, and that doesn't necessarily just need to be Brexit. It can be anything else that's going to make a change, freeing up time for our administrators to do what they're good at, and that is adding value to our business rather than responding to processes that could potentially be automated. And I'm going to finish off talking about Brexit with new marketing initiatives, which we're going to allude on in the next section of our demonstration today. But that is about upping your marketing game. While it can't emphatically be said that Brexit will have an effect on your prospects, preparing for a lull in bookings, preparing for the worst, being prepared is certainly a smart move. Being proactive is certainly a smart move for any organisation. It might seem obvious, but improving and increasing the way you market to both new and existing customers is a great way to add visibility, regardless of whether that buffer is necessary or not. I'd certainly advise anybody to start looking at that in more detail. And as I mentioned, if you'd like any more information on this, please do visit our blog. Over to you, Patrick, to talk about sales and marketing.
Thank you very much. Yes. So we focused in the training survey about sales and marketing, and the left stat shouldn't really be a surprise. 100% of people surveyed use some form of social media, be it LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, anything like that. LinkedIn does come out on top big time. 56%, that's an awful lot of people that use LinkedIn. I understand that. It's specifically designed for business use. And what we have seen, which is phenomenal really, is a rise in email marketing, especially when you think about GDPR, the net tightening what you can and can't say within emails. You've seen a huge rise, which is a really good thing to see. Certainly from a marketing perspective, it's really good to see that's on the rise. But the next graphic is very interesting, and I'll explain why. Obviously, you've got the 100% social media, which talks about how do you market your courses. Only 80% on websites. It's really worthwhile pushing courses on there. It seems an obvious trait, but it's always worth delving into it. But the part of that that's really interesting is events at 33%. And this is why. Year on year, we are seeing more people attending events. Now, on your screen in just a moment, you'll find another poll, which will give you an idea of what we want to find is what industry event have you attended this year. So there's a few examples there, and there'll also be another one. By all means, click away, let's find out where you're attending. But the reason why is there's more and more events. We've talked about Learn Tech, there's the Festival of Work, but there's also, we do our own show, Everest. But as I said, more and more events, more and more people attending. Why aren't people marketing their courses, their organisation within those events? It's a real missed opportunity there, and it's something that I think more people should be focusing on, certainly going into the next few months and years to come, really. And the next slide is brought to you, I say brought to you, but it's with a bit of help from Digital 22. Again, they came to Everest, the gentleman there did a fantastic talk, and it's worth having a look at their website because they've got a brilliant guide to inbound marketing. It's well worth saving that website and jotting it down for later use. What's involved with inbound marketing? Well, it's content production, so any blogging will certainly drive visitors to your site, email nurturing, social media, paid advertising, and already discussed video. Anyone that's seen a video is more likely to retain that information. And what else can you do? Well, we can get a head start. One of these three tactics will give a huge boost to your business. So you can often look at a website chatbot. This is something that we use at Access Planet because people prefer to get a real-time response from someone who's answering their question directly. There is, of course, video, something we've already touched upon. People prefer to see what you do, what you can provide within a video. But the really important one is podcasts. Now, I myself, personally, I listen to loads and loads of podcasts. There are over 700,000. And just to let you know, Access Planet are starting their own podcast, which will be running out before the end of September. Will be running out podcast, and everyone who's attended today will send you links to see if you would like to subscribe. So it's worth having a look at one of those three.
And that about ends what we've got to talk to you guys about today. That doesn't mean that the webinar is closing. Please do hang on. What I'd like to say is if you are interested in getting more information, wanting to view either Chris Wigglesworth and CostCheck's presentation or indeed Digital 22's, please do visit our Everest Roundup page on our website where you can get access to a whole host of other talks that are on there and indeed full access to slide decks as well if you are interested in that. And what I'd like to end off today, before we move on to question and answer section, what I'd like you all to do is just take a second and if you could just add either into the chat box or indeed into the question and answer box, just one phrase or one term that you feel really sort of succinctly sums up the state of the training industry survey today. That would be really useful. And what I'd also like to add is if anyone has any questions about what we've looked at today or any questions in general, we will have time now for questions. So please do add any questions that you might have. And if you want to go ahead and give us some suggestions on how you feel the training industry. Got some really interesting ones in here. Need to modernise, Brexit proofing. So yeah, stuff that we've already talked about today. So yeah, some really interesting comments there, guys. Thanks for that. And just to give you a visibility, this is some of the responses that we got from our industry survey. Some that really jumped out at us, as you can see: VR, Brexit, needs to modernise. And for me, I find that there's one here that's not so big, but I find that the industry, from my experience, is becoming more and more competitive. There's more and more people entering the marketplace, and it's about making sure that your business stands out. And that's why it's so important to make sure that you harness those inbound marketing tools. That's why it's so important that you make use of feedback that you receive, either to improve your processes or indeed for that social proof to enable you to increase your online bookings. Hopefully that will enable you to then navigate the post-Brexit Britain. So I'm just going to very quickly have a look at any questions we might have in here. And there's one really good one here from someone who's attending here, which is, what is the next disruptive tech in the training industry? Now that is a really, really good question from there. So I think we've already touched on it. I think the rise of virtual reality, augmented reality in general is a huge opportunity for the training industry to modernise. As Patrick already mentioned, the ability to offer really complex training in a safe, cost-effective environment is a huge opportunity for us to increase our revenue streams. Because that's not what I'm saying is we need to shift away from classroom training, but it's all about ensuring that whatever training you offer value to that learner from the start of their journey, from their experience in that online booking process, all the way through to classroom sessions, supplemented with virtual reality, gamification, e-learning. So I think it's about the real sort of disruptive tech or disruptive approaches is to diversify the way in which you offer training. Now, there's not been too many more questions come through here that I can answer off quickly. There are a few that I'll get back to offline, but I'd like to thank you all for attending today. Appreciate that we've got finished a little bit early. I've been Joe Nixon. This is Patrick.
Yeah, I've been Patrick. It's an absolute pleasure to go through this webinar with yourselves today.
If anybody would like any more information on Access Planet, please do feel free to visit our website and indeed our blog. Feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn, and I'm sure we'll have a great conversation offline. Thanks again. Take care. Please be aware we will be sending through a video of today's session as well, so look out for that. And indeed, as Patrick mentioned, an invite to that podcast. Thanks for your time, guys. Take care. Have a lovely day.
See you later.